nonprofit civic leader and a social impact tech entrepreneur. Dilara is the president of Muslim Civic Coalition, and she will be leading us through our next session.
Okay. This is amazing. Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum. And may God's peace be with you. When we first envisioned our steering team,
Do you want to take a mic?
No, we don't have a mic, so I'm just going to explain why. When we first envisioned this meeting, we thought, you know, there are 500,000 elected officials in the nation. If you include all the appointed officials, we're in the millions. So we said, so how many of them identify as Muslims? We couldn't even find a database that did that, number one. So we started changing it. Once we started building a database, we got to about 500 people. 500 people in a database of elected and appointed officials out of over 1 million total across this nation. We talk about underrepresented communities. Raise your hand if you are part of one. That's right. And raise your hand if you are part of the solution to change that. Yes. Alhamdulillah. And so when we thought of this session, we literally thought, look at this room. It's an amazing room in the heart of the city of Chicago, sponsored by NPR for us. But we thought we would get 50 people, maybe, like out of 500, maybe we could get 50 people here, 10% of us. We had over 100 people register, another 50 that showed interest but couldn't make it, and over 25 states represented today. And that's why we don't have a mic. We weren't preparing for all of it. And as the numbers grew, we didn't want to change the venue and go, into the suburbs of Chicago. We really wanted to stay in the city. And so please bear with us. Come closer. Advocate for yourself. You are all people who advocate for others, so advocate for yourself and listen and hear and speak as you need, inshallah. So this session is a fireside chat because it is a conversation with the four of us. And with the about 100 of us in this room. This conversation is about protecting all our civil rights as Americans. Every color is represented in this room. Many, many races are represented in this room. Many, many ethnicities are represented in this room. And many faiths are represented in this room. So when we work, and Keith said this to me, so I'm going to say this. I've said this so many times, Keith, and always attributed to you for something like that.
It's yours now.
I remember asking him, should our organization be called Muslim Civic Coalition? Should our organizational meeting for today be the American Muslim Elected and Appointed Officials Network? Should the word Muslim be in it? And I don't know if you remember saying this to me, but you said, Dilara, we don't have Muslim in our name because we serve Muslims. We have Muslim in our name because we are Muslims who serve everyone. And so I would like to introduce my brothers and my sister. I'm here both to help engage this conversation, but I am part of Governor Pritzker's Commission on Discrimination and Hate Crimes, CDHC. Appointed officials are the pipeline to elected office, and we absolutely need every single person in this room and others to be part of that appointed officials network. I'm sitting next to Attorney General Kwame Raoul of Illinois. When A.G. Raoul got elected, I had tears in my eyes. His story of being Haitian American, his story of being an advocate for all of us, and now his position to be the chief legal officer that protects our civil rights in our state. Takbir. And thank you very much. Next to him sits our own brother, Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison. Our brother Keith has been in Minnesota throughout his life, working for us, all of us across the nation. He didn't, I don't think, plan what's happened today and where he sits. But God took talent, God took intention, and our Creator had a plan for Keith. Started with city council, went on to states, then went on to Congress, and we will learn about his now path into being the AG of Minnesota and potentially even what could come next. And then next to Keith's right is Raoul Roman, Georgia State Representative. Raoul Roman. Did I say Georgia State Representative? Raoul Roman, Palestinian American Georgian. And we'll learn a little bit about her story, and again, how she protects the rights of all people and builds policies into law to ensure that we're all able to live freely, not just in Georgia, but anywhere in this country. So I want to begin by thanking you all for being here.
Thank you.
And I wanted to make the introductions really like what it means to us that you are here. And now I want you each to speak for about 3 minutes, if possible, on like what it means to do your work, and why is this position important? Because many of our communities don't quite understand what state legislators do, don't quite understand what attorney generals do, and don't quite understand why people are appointed to positions. So 3 minutes, I know it's very short, but we're gonna have this conversation that's gonna continue. Why this position? How does it help all our communities protect our rights and thrive?
Let me start down here. Okay. So hi, everybody. My name is Raoul, and I am the Georgia State Representative for House District 97. Don't be too surprised that it's Georgia. We actually are quite a diverse state, although our state leadership does not really look like that. So with my position, what's really interesting is I like to say it's baby Congress to give people an understanding of what branch of government I sit in. But in terms of the laws and things that we do, it is closer to your front door than Congress. So if you're thinking about, how far a position is from your front door, I would say city council is probably one of the closest people, and then I would say president is the farthest person from your front door. And I sort of sit in that weird middle where I tend to help people figure out how to fix whatever problem is going on with them from a constituent services perspective. I've helped people get their passports. I've helped people move their cases. I have had to, my office and I have done everything from unemployment checks all the way down to, I have a background check that's being held up and I need to start my job. And that's sort of the constituent services side, right? People can reach us very quickly. Most of people can actually call me directly on my phone. I mean, that is sort of how close we are to my constituents. On the flip side of that, when it comes to legislation, we try really hard in a state like Georgia, which is controlled by Republicans in all three branches of government, to protect civil rights as much as possible and build broad coalitions to pursue further protections. So what does that look like? One example is public schools. Right now, a lot of public schools are struggling everywhere. And so what we try to do in Georgia in particular is we actually have a broad coalition of not just Democrats, but also rural Republicans that understand that if these public schools go away, kids are not going to have an option. They are not going to have a school to go to. And so we try really hard to look past those sort of party divides and figure out, okay, what is a problem that's facing my community that's also facing your community, and how can we work on it together? And so from like a very broad, 30,000 foot level, that's sort of what we do. My body has, my legislative body, we've done the Civil Rights Act recently, like a version of that on the Georgia level after the tragic murder of Ahmaud Arbery. We have done, at least on our side, we've actually stopped some really bad mandatory minimum bills. Some did pass this year, unfortunately. But that's where I sit in the political ecosystem.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So here's a quick talk on state versus federal. I used to be in Congress for 12 years, and when I left, Some of you thought I was nuts, right? Well, the reason why is that the action is at the state. I would describe the relationship between the state and the federal government as not baby Congress. Forgive me, sister. I would say that the state does certain things that it and only it can do, and the federal government does things that it can do. The federal government, interstate commerce, federal programs like Social Security, foreign policy. State, criminal justice, voting. When I was in Congress, I never could figure out why members of Congress did not work with state legislators, because state legislators draw the lines that we run in and set the qualifications for who gets to vote. If felons can vote, it's because your state says they can vote. If you can, in Vermont, you can, if you get in trouble with the law, you can always vote, even in prison. In Florida and Texas, you may never get to vote again. And this is all, so what else? Any law other than concerning family law and marriage, any law, as I said, criminal justice, anything involving charities, a lot of healthcare, a lot of federal programs send the money to the state and say, y'all deal with it. Block grant, oh, but your Medicaid, your Medicaid is run, your Medicare is run that way. Just all kinds of programs. The state, we live in a time of what you call federal devolution, meaning they're pushing power from the federal government to the state, and so more power is going to the state. Even in war, how many people in National Guard units tromping around Iraq? Listen, so I left Congress because God bless Congress, and I was honored and that y'all sent me there and kept me there for 12 years. Good to see Nadia, she and I worked together there, and many of y'all. But the state is where it really is at now and for the next 20 years, quite honestly.
Well, yeah, they said it all. First of all, good afternoon, and thanks for having me here. We get to appreciate Chicago from here.
Yes.
I had the benefit of coming in to serving as Attorney General with a class that included Keith Ellison, who came from Congress, and I came from our state legislature where I served for 14 years, and you know, I must admit, when I made my decision to run for Attorney General, I said to myself, am I going to leave this body that I feel like I've really mastered? I've been able to do some great things in terms of passing voting rights protection in state law, make sure that as has happened after we passed the Illinois Voting Rights Act, and I don't even know if people know, we have a Voting Rights Act here in Illinois that goes beyond what federal voting rights protection has, to not only protect communities that can achieve up to in excess of 50% of vote, but communities that can have impact on an election. And we've had people, we have now hugely more diverse legislature as a result of the Illinois Voting Rights Act. It includes the election of the first Muslim American state representative, includes increase of Asian American state representatives, and more Latinx representatives that come from geographic areas where they don't necessarily make up in excess of 50% of the electorate, which would get them arguably federal voting rights protection, but because they can impact an election, they get protection under the Illinois Voting Rights Act. And so that's one of the achievements from being in the state legislature that I treasure. So do I want to become an AG? I made the decision to become an AG because, and I think Keith would agree with this, I think there's never been a time in history where who you elect as your state attorney general matters as much as it does in the course of the past 7-8 years, because there have been efforts to undermine the rights of our constituents, and these battles all end up in the courtroom, and it's state AGs both individually and collectively that are on the forefront of that fight. So that's the reason why it became an easy decision for me to leave the legislature and come to the AG's office.
I'm sorry, can I say one more quick thing? Let's give a hand to Kwame. So, when the Trump administration said it will not defend the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, state AGs did. When they were trying to stop vote by mail, me and Kwame and our gang sued DeJoy in the U.S. Postal Service. Right now, we're defending ESG. We fought the Muslim ban. Remember that?
Yeah.
The state AGs will led that fight. So I could go on, but the city really has, the city is a creature of the state. The state legislature can disband Chicago. That's not gonna happen, but theoretically it could. The federal government cannot disband the state. We sue the federal government all the time. We walk into court with the federal government as a peer. And so it's important to understand that little nuance. So sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
Also wanted to make is, and all three of you, would you say before you were an elected official, you were also appointed to an office or provided an opportunity to work with officials in the city so that they had your voice?
Yeah.
And they knew who you were? Not at all. Organizer?
Yes, absolutely.
Organizer.
Yeah, so I started my entire journey as an organizer knocking doors, and I've always believed that you can do a lot one door at a time.
Yep.
And so that experience really helped me understand the coalition in Georgia. But then on a professional level, I did work as a federal contractor, so I was working with a lot of state officials, appointed and not appointed, who were trying to solve some really, really big picture problems, and some of our most important stakeholders were state level officials.
And I think that's the point for some of us as well. State level appointed officials make big choices and differences. Municipal level appointed officials really help solve critical problems. In Illinois, we have the largest per capita Muslim population in the nation. And what we're trying to do is increase the level of state appointed officials so that we can build a pipeline into elected office. In states like Illinois, people have to know you. The public officials need to know you to be elected into office. And this is that opportunity. But again, if you look at California, Maryland, Virginia, Georgia, Florida, Texas, all of these states have large Muslim populations. All of these states should have dozens of black, brown, tan, white, intersecting with the word Muslim and the identity of Muslim at appointed office. In the state of Illinois, we have Madia Muzaffar appointed to the Council on Women and Girls. We have Dr. Tariq Butt appointed to the Illinois Medical Society. And then we have Sadruddin Noorani who's appointed. I'm appointed, but there's a handful of us. We hope that within 2 years we triple that number, if not more. And we hope New York does that, Texas does that, Florida does that, etc. Why? In my commission, we made a list of all agencies and organizations, nonprofits, for-profits, that serve refugees, that serve any kind of anti-discriminatory acts, etc. Guess what? Out of a list of 200 organizations, 2 were Muslim. Muslim-led. They serve everybody, but they were Muslim-led too. So as a commissioner, I asked, hey, how do we decide who gets on this list? And they're like, oh, it's just good organizations we know that we can identify.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh, can I send you a list of good organizations we know that you could identify doing this work? And they're like, yes, absolutely. We got 24 names on that list. Right? And that doesn't happen unless one of us is in there asking those questions to get the names of 12 organizations, 24 organizations, leaders on there. So being at the table in any way possible is really, really important. And don't underestimate the value of whatever position that you can use to make sure that our communities are represented. So, going and zooming in from the world of our nation to American Muslims, what are we getting right as a diverse community, as a young community, as a underrepresented community, and what aren't we getting right? Like, from your perspective, AG Raoul, I'd love to hear what you would like us to see us do more of so that you can even serve us better. What we are doing to help you and be a better resident and a neighbor to the people that you serve. And from AG Ellison, same thing. And from your perspective as a state level, what are bills, what are issues, what should we be bringing to state level leaders that then maybe could be impacting how then people see us?
Yeah, as I think about it, and one of the things that you mentioned is that you are a diverse community. And I think oftentimes when we look at communities of interest, we ignore the diversity in classifications. And it's something certainly happens in the Black community, right? The Black community is not monolithic, right? There are conservative Blacks, there were progressive Blacks, there are people in between, there are people like me. That depends on the question you ask. I could be on one side or the other. In the Black community, for example, I'm of Haitian descent. Sometimes there's divide between what's called ADOS in American acceptance of slavery, and those who might come from the Caribbean or from directly from one of our African states. So lifting yourself up as a diverse community and not allowing folks to label you as monolithic. Say, hey, we're a diverse community. Yes, we have some common interests that we will come together and advocate for, but we also have a diversity of opinions within our community, like all communities. I think that's critically important to lift up, such that you are respected by, I'm a Democrat, of course, and I think got a better chance of advocacy from the Democrat Party versus the Republican Party. But I'm one who suggests not to limit conversations to the Democratic Party, right? There have been policies that I've advanced in collaboration with Republicans. So getting it right means talking to everybody, giving them a chance, even though they, on that side of things, they usually fail. Getting it right, but speak to everybody and lift up the diversity of the community.
Excellent points. Talk to everybody, definitely. So what is the Muslim community getting right? Let me tell you, I think I've fundraised from every single state in the union. The Muslim community has been very, very good to me, and to Ilhan, and to Rashida, and to Andre, and to a whole bunch of others. The Muslim community has some of the most financially able people in the country, and some of those well-educated people in the country, and some of the most scholarly people. I've gotten a lot of advice that I just didn't have otherwise. I can tell you, when I was in Congress, and something happened in Iraq, I had friends who'd say, I'm from there, let me tell you what it's like on the ground. I have friends who are in Syria. Let me tell you what's really going on. Libya, all of that. So I felt like I had a bird's eye view. We even had different perspectives. When I talked to my friends in the Turkish community, they said, well, you got to talk to this one, that one, and that one to get the whole picture. And they were fair enough to tell me that, right? So the Muslim community has done all those things. The Muslim community, let me tell you, when I became the first congressperson of the Muslim faith, here's a good thing that the Muslim community did. I might have been the first, but I sure wasn't the last. I mean, now there's 3, and I'm not one of them, and most of them are women. And that's a big deal. I can tell you that the Muslim community in the United States has done a lot of good things, whereas we have not taken the bait that some of the Muslim haters like to throw out there. Like, when Muslims in Europe, being antagonized by certain people, you haven't seen us get spun up by a provocateur. You all know what I mean, right? This is wise, right? You look at, part of what's going on in France is not because of that one case, it's because of a million indignities that people have suffered, if you all understand what I'm saying. What else do we get right? Well, here's something we get wrong. I go to a Muslim community and they say, well, we ought to be doing better on this, we ought to be doing better on that. And I always say, you're doing great. And as a matter of fact, nearly every single community, folks are doing something. They're doing interfaith dialogue, they're running for office, they're doing all kinds of things, but you never give yourself any credit for it. And so I think it's important to talk about the advances that you have made. I mean, it used to be, we'd have an iftar, we have it just amongst ourselves. Now, the iftar is the thing happening during Ramadan that everybody, Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hindu, everything else comes to. Another thing that Muslims aren't doing wrong, but we've got to watch out for. When it comes to interfaith dialogue, we've done a decent job at connecting with our Christian neighbors. We've done a good job reaching out to our Jewish community. We better start getting smart about reaching out to the Hindu community. I am telling you, this is an important relationship to build. It's got to be based on honesty, it's got to be based on trust, but it's got to be built. And if it's like, look, we're just going to agree to disagree about Modi, but we're Americans and we're going to talk anyway, then if that's what it is, then that's what it is. But I'm telling you, we cannot let things that happen in South Asia blow up here. And I hope I'm not stepping on noses. And I love you all, and I don't want to make anybody mad, but when I read about what is happening in places like Houston and other places, California, I just see that on the horizon as a critical relationship point, which must be built. And a lot of us who come from Abrahamic tradition, we don't have any experience with people of Eastern religion, right? So we don't know. We just don't know at all. But some of you guys born and raised in South Asia, like very well. And so you got to teach us, what was the Gujarat riot? Why is it such a potent historical event in your life? We don't know. We're ignorant on this. And the last thing I'd say Muslims need to do better is when it comes to, so we say, the Muslims, we say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Do we not? Mm-hmm. So Allah's the most merciful, right? We're not.
No grace.
We're not.
We give no grace.
We're not. We can be a little bit more merciful on each other.
No grace.
There are Muslims suffering from opioid addiction and alcoholism, scared to come to the mosque because they're going to get a finger wag at them.
Are you recording this?
We got to say that everyone sins, and the mosque is the place where you get well.
Yes, absolutely.
You don't got to get perfect before you walk into the mosque.
Thank you.
And so there's a lot of more things I could say, but thank you.
That's It's like a cool
And
spot
on
right
that
Just to echo some of what was said right now, I would not be in my position had it not been for the Muslim community. I had no intention of running for office this year and ended up launching my campaign 15 days after a very sustained bullying campaign is how I lovingly call it. But it was the thing that really tipped me over was I remember talking to one of our local community leaders and I said, I don't know how to fundraise to save my life. I can run a campaign like the back of my hand. I've been an organizer. I know what I'm doing, but I don't think I'm the best person because I don't know how to fundraise. And he literally, from the moment I announced until the moment I won, connected me to every single person he knew that I needed to know. And that does make or break a candidate, especially the first few months of an election. If you want somebody to have a chance, you need to get behind them immediately, or else they're just not going to have a chance. And I think to echo what was said, truly, I mean, I feel like once the community saw the power in mobilizing and coming together, we've really, really honed in on it. Because ironically, my district, even though it was redrawn, the number of that district was also run by another Muslim woman. She lost, but then she started the Georgia Muslim Voter Project. And it went from voting is haram to we have consistent voter drives now every Jumu'ah. Like, people are learning how to be civically engaged. We now have Muslim Advocacy Day at the Capitol. And so this work started a long time ago. We're starting to see some of the fruits of that. And now we need to expand what we have been working on. And I think that has been an incredible thing to watch, that we're not letting setbacks stop us completely. And that broad coalition. On the flip side, what I would love to see is more discernment, not to contradict what Attorney General Keith Ellison just said, but in addition to that, what I'm saying is that there are some folks who a picture is enough for them. If they can take a photo of somebody and shake their hand, that's enough. And I'm here to say that is not enough. If somebody takes a check from us, we should be asking for more. If we host a fundraiser, we should be able to ask for policy questions. Obviously, you need to build relationships. You need to have those soft touches. That is very important. But if somebody is taking your money and then turning around and not doing what you're asking them to do, there needs to be some sort of, consequences happening there. And to give you a clear example of that, in Georgia, I'm seeing so many Muslims come down to the Capitol. They're really excited, especially about the Republican representatives, and they'll even donate to them. I'm like, you know what, fine, do whatever you need to do. But all they get out of it is a nice photo and a handshake and then nothing else, right? They will pursue really bad policies. There's a really bad bill right now that is probably going to come back next year that would really, I believe, criminalize any sort of speech that criticizes any Israeli human rights. And to me, what I saw was, that was an opportunity for the Muslim community to really flex its muscles. And what I got was, but he's a friend of the community, or she's a friend of the community. Okay, but let's pull on that friendship. Let's ask for better treatment. And I think that's something that we should really start doing more of.
I absolutely agree with that.
And I don't even think we have to make money be exchanged to do that. We've got votes. I remember my older woman, after I ran my race, she sat me down, she had breakfast, she goes, so tell me more about yourself. So we talked, and she said, you're doing this amazing work. Your community is an amazing community. No one knows you because, one, you don't talk about yourselves and promote yourselves, and two, you don't ask us to serve you better. You don't ask us to serve you better. Why? And I had to own it, and I said, we are the community that is told, put your head down, work hard. Put your head down, don't tell people what you do, don't brag, just do your work. And she said, that has to change. She said, you do the work, and then let people know. Humble brag, right? And this is what I'm hearing Keith say too. Humble brag. We are a pretty cool community in America. Where we go, crime is lower. Where we live, education systems are better. What we do is often serve in our local communities. Every single one of us is testimony to that. But people don't know us enough. And when we have a need, We don't go to our local elected officials and public officials and tell them, we need this. I don't have to give you money. I may fundraise for you later, but we need this.
Yeah.
And we have the data to prove we need it. We have the stories to prove we need it. And we elected you, so meet our needs.
And
So, yeah.
two things on that. One, we're Illinois, so you know, definitely don't make it about money in exchange for.
Right.
But two, in all seriousness, I'm a prosecutor too. So. But to your point of the ability and the power to let a voice be heard, I'm going to use an example that killed a bill, that one of the first bills that I introduced when I first started in the legislature. Arnie Duncan was then superintendent of the public schools in Chicago, and he and I actually went to high school together, and we were on a basketball team together, so we've been friends since 13 years old. And he says, well, you know, what do you think the age to begin school, the mandatory age to begin school here in Illinois is? And I said, I don't know, is it 5? He said, no, 7. And so I introduced the bill to change the age to 5. And I thought it was like a no-brainer, slam dunk bill. There's no way that anybody's going to be opposed to this. The Christian home educators came out of the woodworks, and this is back when we had fax machines. They tied up every fax machine in the Capitol. Nobody could, everybody started turning off their fax machines, and nobody could make any use of their phones because they were making their voice heard. Now, it wasn't as if their number was that big, but they were organized enough to make themselves seem even bigger than they were, and they killed my bill so fast. Everybody was afraid to vote on it, notwithstanding the fact that, you know, demographics would have told you that you were okay for voting for 5 years old.
Could I make a quick point? So we talked about Muslim diversity, which is a fact and everybody knows it. Here's some Muslim unity. Nearly every part of the Muslim American community has a tortured relationship with civic engagement and democracy, if you look at our history. Let me just say, let's start with African American Muslims. We couldn't vote at all before 1965. We did in some small northern places in the South, Georgia. Forget about it. You get arrested, you get killed. So 65, that's within my lifetime. And then I talk to my friends who are from Egypt. They're like, you can vote if you want to. Hardly makes a difference. You know, you can vote all you want. Somebody's gonna win with 98% of the vote. Syria, same thing. In fact, you know, this is a common story in a lot of countries, right? So whether you talk about the, you know, folks who's either they or their parents or grandparents immigrated, or Muslims here in the U.S., in some ways, meaningful democratic participation is somewhat new. And can anybody say that I'm incorrect about that? So, one of the reasons we don't really engage in a way that some of us would like is because we're just getting used to it, right? But historically, American immigrants, non-Muslims, have been able to say, well, maybe you're not going to be involved in politics, but your kids will. We don't have the luxury of that. And so within this generation, people who still might have a strong accent from wherever they might have come from, they're getting involved. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. One of the good things about the United States is the second that you're naturalized, you are as American as the president. Yes. And so use it, work it. And so but I would say our background sort of is like, you know, for a lot of Muslim friends of mine who might hail from overseas, it's like, you know, either it's only the elites were involved. Like if you're from Pakistan, if you're not rich, it's hard to be in politics. I only met one guy who was like the Nazim of Karachi, who was not rich. Everybody else, your father, grandfather, so had to be in with the big dogs. Am I right about this?
Right.
Yeah. So now, you know, so so this is a new experience for us. So we do need these. So what I'm really saying is what you're doing right now is extremely important and very good for us, and we benefit from a lot. And then others are like, politics is corrupt. And then, you know, so what, but here I can tell you, we complain about our country all the time. Well, that's one of the rights we have, right? But there's no doubt that modern American society is more democratic than it was in the past, at least for black people, and it is overseas. So it's good for us to understand the why of our reluctance, because it'll help fuel the fact that we can run into this thing big time and make a big difference fairly quick. And you, Dilara, you mentioned appointed. In Minnesota, we may elect the governor, but every cabinet person is appointed. So the commissioner of corrections, the commissioner of education, the commissioner of veterans affairs, the commissioner of pollution control. These are all appointed people. These are very, and then there's the board, there's boards, the board of medical licensing, the board of education, the board of cosmetology. There are all kinds of positions, appointed positions, that you should apply for, particularly if you have an expertise and you're concerned. And don't limit yourself to just the Muslim stuff, right?
Right.
You know, I mean, why can't you join the board of cosmetology? You might say, well, I'm a hijabi and so that's not a thing. Well, you do your nails. That's cosmetology too. Haircuts.
I said, do you know how tight your braids gotta be to fit underneath it?
You know what I mean? And so, you know what the sister said something about braids. There was one issue, does the Board of Cosmetology have jurisdiction over braids or not? Because it's not cutting.
Yeah.
Well, some people on the Board of Cosmetology said, do not put your jurisdiction over us, because this is an ancient African art, and you got no business making me get a license to braid somebody's hair. You know, so that was a big fight on the Board of Cosmetology. So think about that. And then many of y'all, even in here in Chicago, Illinois, have tried to say, well, we're gonna have a mosque here or there, and then the appointed zoning board, maybe it's like, well, we don't, you know, we have oversaturation of mosques now. You know, if you came last week, you could have got it, but somehow we just ran out. We just ran out, flush out. Sorry about that. So what if you get on the zoning board? You know, I think there was a suburban community called something where this was a big deal. Probably there's more than one, but anyway, I yield back. Yeah.
You know, it's 4:54. Thank you so much, and I want to be respectful of time. So for the next question, I want to start with Raoul. Everyone in this room is either elected or appointed or an organizational leader that is supporting those who are elected and appointed and helping build that support network. What are the ways to lead through division? Like, we are also at the same time finding our nation in a very divisive space. Rich versus poor, black, white, tan versus everybody else, and we're in the scarcity mindset of resources. How do you lead through these times of faith divisions, class divisions, racial divisions, ethnic divisions, gender divisions?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is actually where I really, really lean on my faith, because our faith is a just faith. I mean, it is, when you look at Islamic jurisprudence, it is just so deeply rooted in the idea of justice in everything. And whenever my colleagues and I have arguments, they tend to kind of see me as the young, you know, progressive, hasn't lived long enough to know what's up kind of thing. But to give you an example, in Georgia, for the second year in a row, we have now a $5 billion surplus. We had one last year, we have one again this year. And yet we haven't expanded Medicaid. In fact, we just kicked 100,000 people off of Medicaid. We still can't, we gave cops $6,000 raise, but we gave teachers only $2,000 after freezing their pay for 10 years. And so what I have tried to get people to understand is that scarcity is a manufactured state of being, and it is a choice. It is a policy choice. And that's why I remind people, particularly within the Muslim community, our diversity is our strength, and there are people that are trying to destroy that from every angle, and I'm watching it happen, right? And so I think our community, frankly, is so uniquely positioned to protect so many of us without even realizing it, because in a place like Georgia, for example, the Muslim community is like 6 times the margin of victory in the last 2 or 3 presidential cycles. And so in those situations, I remind people, like, what does our faith say, right? Like, what does our faith teach us? That we need to care for the poor and the hungry. We need to care for our society. The health of our society is the health of all of us. And when you see people come to you and say, you don't have this thing because this other person doesn't have enough took it from you, that's when we need to stand up and say, no, it's all of you taking it away from us. And so through moments of division, through moments like that, I always try to remind people, yes, do we have different social values, conservative values, immigrant values, whatever the case may be than other people? Yes. But we have common needs, every single one of us, no matter what background we come from, what our position in society is. And we need to keep our eye on that ball and on that prize, because while we're all sort of doing, getting lost in some of these, I like to call them internet wars. I mean, there are people literally taking away our rights every day, right? Whether it's in the state legislature, whether it's in Congress, whether it's, our attorney general is now charging everybody with domestic terrorism left and right. I mean, it is just out of control, right? And so I always try to remind people, remember what is actually at stake. Get off your phones for, get off WhatsApp and go actually sit with your neighbors for a while. Because I think we're entering some really dangerous times, particularly when it comes to mis and disinformation. And so I've been urging people to sort of come together in community a lot more.
Thank you. Well, here's the problem. We speak about polarization and division as a thing that's very undesirable, right? Well, one way to eliminate the polarization is for us just to agree that fascism is great, racism is great, and all of us need to go back where we came from. We wouldn't have any division then.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if you're trying to say that we're going to take over the U.S. Capitol by force, and I'm thinking that's a bad idea, then we got division. You see my point?
Yeah.
We cannot agree with people who hold values that are anti-democratic, anti-human rights, and so the only choice you have is to stand up and assert. Now, I think that Raoul is absolutely right. The way, the solution to racism is solidarity. You understand? The solution to greed is generosity. We should exemplify the value system, stand up for them. We should write more. I would say that it would be, I've been saying this for years, we need more Muslims writing books, plays, songs, prayers, whatever. We need more. We need our artistic community to show up, because that inspires people, right? That inspires people. We need to be in close contact with the imams. People need to hear this on a Friday and every other day of the week. And the pushback is, I think, based on values. The good thing about Islamic values is that every other faith in the world shares them. I don't know any faith that says lying is okay. To treat the poor with contempt. I mean, what religion is that? Republicanism, see. But not Christianity doesn't say that. So my point is, we need to be involved, and we've got to continue to. I didn't say we need to come out of the mosque. I'm saying we need to continue to come out of the mosque, because we're already out. You all are doing it every day. And I just commend you for your leadership. Alhamdulillah for you. You are doing fantastic. And all we need you to do is more of what you're doing. So thank you.
So in 2004, in November, when Barack Obama was elected to U.S. Senate on November 2nd, and on November 4th, they called all of us who were competing to be appointed to replace him in the state to meet on November 6th. I was working with my friend Clyde here at the City Colleges of Chicago at the time. And so I was fortunate enough to be appointed on that day. And they needed to do it that fast because on November 8th was legislative veto session. And Barack Obama was there on that day and to say goodbye to his colleagues in the legislature. And so I pulled him aside and said, can we talk? Because I've never been in the state capitol before. So the first time I walked to the state capitol, I was a state senator. Serious. I said, can you give me some advice? He said, well, I'm about to board a plane to D.C., but come down to my office and we can talk. And I said, well, yeah, that's cool, but it's not my office now. But, so he didn't give me advice. He says, you know people, Kwame, you know people from Chicago, you know people from the South Side and from the West Side, and it's the easiest thing for you to just gravitate to the people you already know. He says, my advice to you is to get to know people from other parts of the state. Yeah. Walk on the other side of the aisle and get to know those people. Have conversations about the things you have in common, and recognize that you have things that you differ on, and have conversations about that as well without letting the conversations end prematurely. I firmly embraced that and made some friendships amongst people who I didn't agree with 98% of the time. When up in Minnesota, when the George Floyd murder occurred, one of the first calls I made about a policy change I wanted to make in the state of Illinois with regards to police decertification was to a very conservative Republican who I had served with in the Senate, who had once introduced a bill on police licensing because he had been a county sheriff in a very conservative part of the state, but he had trouble firing bad deputies. And so I didn't immediately reach out to people in the progressive community and say, hey, we need to advocate for more robust police decertification. I reached out to one of the most conservative people I knew in the state, who I knew embraced the concept. And I said, I want to revisit your idea, but I need the sheriffs at the table, and they certainly won't come to the table if I'm the one to call. The second call I made was to a more moderate Republican who had served as a police chief and then faced the same problem. And as a result of that, we had all of law enforcement at the table advocating for something that I had initially just called and asked. We might not have had all the folks at the table. My point in this is, we've, as you said, we've reached a point of great division, but notwithstanding that, we can't be afraid of having some conversations, even with some of the folks who appear to be totally nuts, right? We have to force these conversations. We have to let people know about all the things that we have in common. The last thing I will say, and I think the representative made the point well, we gotta put these things away. We gotta take them out of our children's hands. We gotta keep them. We are collectively as AGs on a bipartisan basis working to hold social media platforms responsible for the harms that they've done to the minds of our children. For each and every one of us who are in families, we need to take our responsibility to limit in ways. If you take China, for example, with where TikTok emerges out of, they have restrictions on access for their children to TikTok in a way that we don't have here. So the people who engineer these social media platforms don't allow their children to go on them.
Right.
So you heard today, how do you lead through divisive times? You have mercy on yourself. You have mercy on others. You talk to people who you don't agree with, and you reach out to everyone. You stay fast to the values of our faith that are good values for all people, and respect the values of all other faiths that are good values for all of us. When you take positions of leadership, you ensure others are pulled up and they have positions and opportunities for leadership. We're going to take 5 minutes and we're really going to hear from all of you. You're also leading through divisions. Will you each take 30 seconds and just stand up and speak to what is a tool or a way of being that you utilize to be a leader in divisive times? 30 seconds each so we can get as many people as possible.
Start counting.
Please forgive us in advance.
Start counting, Dilara. One of the things that African American Muslims have had to be really good at is reaching beyond the Muslim community. I have like 3 people in my generation that are Muslims in my family, and I had 11 brothers and sisters. So you have to find those things that you have in common, the issues that you have in common, the concerns that you have in common. And I'm saying that even as a Muslim community, I don't think we're doing that enough across our different ethnic divisions. You said we're a new community. We're only a new community if those of you who've been coming in the last 20 or 30 years don't come and feel like you're joining this Muslim community that's been here for the longest. That would be like saying Prophet Muhammad, when they made the hijrah, when he got there, they were one community, and the people that were waiting on them were another community. So I think we have to do that.
Please do say your name.
Oh, I'm Clyde Ellison.
We all know you, but you have names.
I'm sorry,
And- yes.
Clyde Ellison.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Masood Khan. I'm a gastroenterologist and also the first American Muslim to be elected to the city of Franklin on the school board. Never any small position is small. Alhamdulillah, with the mercy of Allah, I was able to achieve a small change in the school where when we committed 9/11, we stopped using the word Muslims or Islamic. Because every time we use Islamic terrorists or Muslim terrorists at the time of 9/11, I told the school board, you're shaming the Muslim community, please stop using that. And by the mercy of Allah, the third Union road, we have stopped using that. So please do not assume any road as small. Jazakallah.
I'm Syed from Madison, former Common Council president. So state of Wisconsin is, I will get a little bit here, so yeah, I can see. So state of Wisconsin is really purple. Each ward is 2 vote difference to flip Democrat and Republican. So in Dane County, we have 15,000 Muslims. In city of Madison, registered voters around 5,000 plus. I'm not sure about Milwaukee. But my point here is these votes can really flip the ideology and the vision of the state. So during this time of division, I try to educate regardless of our differences. We need to really make sure the policy we care, those votes are a reflection of those policies. We need to vote and come out. In city of Madison, the current election, the mayor won by only 3,000 votes. If Muslim voters come out 5,000 and they vote, they can flip the race either way. That's why our role, elected official and community organizations like the WMCA, it's critical to educate how we can advocate for ourselves, and also the federal funding like ARPA, Inflation Reduction Act. Those money comes to state and then cities, and cities make decision where that money is gonna be invested. And if we are not voting, if we're not communicating, regardless they're blue or red, we're not gonna get our voices heard. So that's the important education, and then get out and vote.
All right. Hello, my name is Sambo Balde, state representative from Madison, Wisconsin.
First Muslim.
Yeah, first Muslim elected in the city council. First Muslim elected at the city council. But I want to say that wouldn't have happened without Kit Ellison. And I'm not saying it because he's here. I was first elected in 2015. The only Muslim person across the country who came to support me was Ellison.
Wow.
In 2016, Keith and I went to Colombia.
Yes, we did.
To advocate for things that we are advocating here for our own people.
Mm-hmm.
In 2020, when I was running, the first person I called was Keith. And I said, look, I know you've been there for me, but I see an opportunity to serve my community even better. And so I want to run for state assembly. Would you endorse me? Would you come to my kickoff? He said, Sam, whatever you want, let me know. He kicked off my campaign. I had 4 other white people run against me during the primary. I beat all of them by getting over 50% of the votes. So the reason I say that, I know we all have 30 seconds to say something. It is important to give money to political campaigns.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. But it is most important for us to be there for each other. I have Keith's cell phone since 2015, except if you change it today, I still have it. So let's be there for each other. You said let's continue getting out of the mosque or the masjid, but let's continue getting back in the masjid. What is happening is our Muslim leaders in the masjid are not very welcoming to politicians. I have never been announced in any of my masjid, any one of my masjid. Wow. So it is important that as advocates, but also talk to our imams, our leaders, that it is important that the churches do it. They are a 501c or whatever it is. But Muslims say, no, we cannot do politics. It's not politicking, it's just letting people know that we exist. This person wants to stand for us and support it. So thank you very much.
I wasn't going to say anything, but Samba inspired me a little bit. Right? In the summer of 2011, I was an intern at Impact in DC, and I went up to Jummah at Capitol Hill, right? And I sat there and we prayed, and I looked over, and there was a Muslim congressman praying next to me, right? And I've never had a conversation with Keith Ellison, right? But he inspired me, right? He's inspired lots of people, right? But now, but everyone here is inspiring, right? And we all are inspiring other people in the work that we're doing, right? When they look and see a Muslim woman as a state representative in Georgia or in Ohio or anywhere in the country, and it reflects the complexity of the Muslim experience, right? But we can all be bridges. When I got elected mayor just a month ago, I looked around. I was so excited. I thought Akron was going to be the biggest city with the Muslim mayor, but Farrakhan in Irvine has me beat by like 50,000 people. Yeah. But I looked around, and all the aunties and uncles who supported me, they did not have I didn't put it together till you said it. They didn't have the experience that their impact could get someone elected in that way. They were just doing it to be nice. Yeah. But they've seen and now they see the point, right? And maybe now they'll donate to someone else and see it as more than just doing a favor to someone they've known. So thank you.
My mom, who is not a political person, her greatest contribution to my campaign was she cooked for my canvassers.
Yes.
The point of that is every single person has a role to play because each of us has something that they're passionate about. You don't have to be the door knocker, the money maker, whatever, but you have a role to play in this ecosystem.
What's she making?
We have actually right after dinner, we're actually doing an hour session on each of us stepping up and talking about our work and what we want others to support each other on. So we will have more time. But please, thank you very much. Thank you, AG Raoul, AG Ellison, State Representative Roman. Thank you all for being such great.
Thank you.